Tension erupts live when Jimin snaps at Jungkook over a cryptic family truth. She's not your mother. Secrets unravel in this gripping K-drama-inspired thriller. She's not your mother. Jimin's voice cut through the air like shattered glass, silencing the studio in an instant. The room fell deadly still. The cameras were still rolling live. Red lights blinked like panicked heartbeats. Jungkook stood frozen, his expression caught between confusion and betrayal, still holding the mic he'd just used to quote his father's old advice about love and loyalty. Jimin's chest rose and fell rapidly. His jaw was clenched, the tendons in his neck twitching with every breath. His hand still trembled from slamming it on the table, a bottle of water now tipped and dripping off the edge. Producer Han, behind the glass, gestured wildly at the tech team to cut the feed. Too late. The chat was already flooding with exploding emojis and shocked reactions. #NotYourMother was climbing the trends before anyone could blink. Jungkook's voice, when it came, was soft. "What did you say?" Jimin didn't flinch. "I said, she's not your mother, Jungkook. She never was." The words settled like ash, heavy and choking. No one moved. Not Taehyung, who had been laughing seconds before. Not the makeup artist crouched behind a panel. Not the assistant director whispering into her headset. The only thing moving in that moment was the past, surging up through the floorboards like floodwater. It had started months ago, though no one had seen it coming. Jimin had changed. At first it was subtle. Longer silences, darker clothes, missed calls. Jungkook had chalked it up to burnout. The band had been pushing hard for their world comeback tour, juggling variety shows, endorsements and late-night recordings. But now, standing under the suffocating heat of studio lights, it was clear. Something deeper had been unraveling. Jungkook blinked, trying to make sense of it. Then, who is she? The woman who raised me. If not her, then who? Jimin looked away, jaw tightening. His hands curled into fists at his sides. "You don't want the answer to that." "Yes, I do." Jungkook shot back, voice rising with the pitch of panic. "Tell me. Now." Jimin laughed, hollow and bitter. "You think quoting your dad makes you wise? That man left you a legacy of lies. You think I snapped because of a stupid line about marriage?" He stepped closer. "You have no idea what he did to us. To me. And now you're just parroting his poison. On camera. Like it's gospel." The tension crackled like static. Their breaths echoed in the silence. "What did he do, Jimin?" Jungkook's voice broke. "What are you talking about?" Jimin's eyes glistened, but the tears didn't fall. "Your father didn't marry your mother out of love. He married her to erase someone else. Someone I loved." The words hung in the air, surreal and jagged. Jungkook's mind reeled. His memories fractured. Christmas mornings, lullabies, her perfume in the hallway. Was it all a lie? Jimin finally looked at him. Really looked. "You ever wonder why she never looked you in the eyes when she said, 'I love you'? Why there are no baby pictures before age 3? Why your father burned the old journals?" No, that's not true," Jungkook whispered, stumbling backward. "You're lying." "I wish I was," Jimin said, his voice ragged. "But your truth is built on ashes." Then came the security guards, quietly trying to defuse the scene. The crew began to move again, whispers and nervous glances flying across the room. But the damage was done. Jungkook stood alone on the set, blinking under the lights, the echo of a truth he didn't want ringing in his ears. And far away, in a quiet house on the outskirts of Seoul, a woman turned off her TV, poured herself a drink, and stared long at a locked drawer in her study. Her hand hovered over the key she hadn't touched in over 20 years. Behind her, framed on the wall, was a photo of 2 boys, one laughing, the other watching him with a secret in his eyes. The air outside the studio was bitter cold, but Jungkook didn't feel it. He walked fast, blindly, past the rows of paparazzi and fans, past security guards calling his name. His ears rang with echoes of Jimin's voice. She never was. His fingers were numb around his phone, though he hadn't dialed anyone. Who would he even call? His father was gone. His mother, if she was even his mother, was unreachable. And Jimin? Jungkook stopped in the alley behind the broadcast center and braced himself against the brick wall. The texture was rough, grounding. He breathed hard. The pain in his chest was not from the cold. It was from the splintering truth wedging itself between every breath. A voice echoed from the shadows. You weren't supposed to find out like that. He turned sharply. Jimin, you followed me? No, Jimin said quietly, stepping into the faint orange glow of the alley light. I waited. I knew you'd run. Jungkook's jaw tensed. You ambushed me. You quoted him. Jimin's tone flared again, raw and bitter. You stood there, with millions watching, and repeated the same poison that ruined everything. Because I believed it meant something. Jungkook exploded. I grew up on that advice. I built my idea of love around it. You think I wanted to be lied to? Jimin moved closer, his voice dangerously calm. Then stop defending it. Stop defending him. Jungkook laughed bitterly. You think I'm defending my father? I didn't even know the man. He died when I was 9, Jimin. I remember his cologne more than I remember his voice. There was a silence charged and heavy. I'm not mad at you for not knowing, Jimin said, almost whispering. I'm mad that he took everything from us and buried it. And now the world mourns him like a hero, while I live every day with the ruins. What ruins? Jungkook demanded. You keep saying cryptic shit like ashes and lies. What exactly did he do? Jimin stared at him for a long moment. Then he pulled something from his coat pocket. A charred, crumpled photograph. He handed it over. It showed 2 boys, maybe 10 or 11. One unmistakably Jimin, the other... Jungkook blinked. The other boy looked like him. But not him. There was something off, older eyes, a different jawline. That's not me. No. That's Seojun, Jimin said softly. Your brother. The words hit like a thunderclap. Jungkook's mouth went dry. I don't have a brother. You did, Jimin said. Until he vanished. And no one spoke of him again. That's insane. It's the truth. Jungkook shook his head, backing away. No, I would know. My mother would have told me. She's not your mother. The reminder sliced clean through his denial. Who is my mother? Jungkook asked, voice trembling. If not her, then who? Jimin hesitated, then said, I don't know her real name. Your father made sure of that. But I remember her. She was kind, beautiful, quiet, and she loved you, deeply. Jungkook's knees buckled and he sank onto the curb. The world was spinning. He made her disappear, Jimin continued, and brought in someone else. Someone who looked just enough like her if you were young enough, confused enough. That's crazy. It's documented, Jimin said. Or it was. Until your father burned every record that could trace back to her. You're talking like he's some criminal mastermind. Jimin's smile was laced with grief. Because he was. Jungkook looked at the photo again. Seojun. A boy who looked like him but wasn't him. A boy erased. Why would he do that? I used to think it was to protect you, Jimin murmured. Now I think it was to protect himself. He was scared. Of losing power. Of losing the narrative. So he created one. Jungkook stared into the distance. His voice was hollow. And you? What's your part in this story? Jimin sat beside him on the curb. I loved your brother. Jungkook turned sharply. He wasn't just a friend, Jimin continued. We were in love. Young, foolish, but real. And your father found out. Jungkook said nothing. He threatened to destroy my family if I spoke. Then Seojun vanished. They said he ran away. But I never believed that. The silence between them was laced with old pain and new betrayal. After a long while, Jungkook whispered, Why didn't you tell me sooner? I tried, Jimin said. But every time I got close, you pulled away. You didn't want your memories touched. You clung to them like a shield. Jungkook's voice was hoarse. Because they were all I had. I know. More silence. Wind rustled the plastic bag near their feet. Somewhere a car backfired. I need proof, Jungkook said finally. Not just stories. I need to see the wreckage myself. Jimin nodded. Then come with me. There's a box. Your real mother left it with me. I haven't opened it in years. The apartment was dark, quiet. Jimin's place was stark, clean lines, muted colors. But the moment he opened the coat closet and pulled out the false floorboard, Jungkook knew something sacred was buried there. Jimin handed him a wooden box, worn and locked. She told me never to open it unless you asked, he said. Jungkook took it. His hands shook. The key was taped to the bottom. Inside were photos, letters, a bracelet with his initials, not JK, but SJ. Seojun. Jungkook's breath caught. That's you, Jimin whispered. No, Jungkook said. That's him. Seojun. Jimin looked at him. Or maybe that's who you were before they changed you. The box fell to the floor with a thud. Jungkook stood frozen. His mind fractured, memories unspooling like broken film. He saw himself, no Seojun, at a piano. A lullaby. A woman with sad eyes. A fire. A scream. Then nothing. Jimin, he whispered. What if I'm not Jungkook? Jimin looked at him, his eyes wet. Then we have to find out who you really are. Jungkook's world was gone. But for the first time he wasn't running. He was ready to dig through the ashes. Rain pounded Seoul like a relentless interrogation, smearing the city's neon lights into ghostly trails across car windows and glass storefronts. The storm had begun the same night Jungkook opened the box, and it hadn't let up since. It felt intentional, like the sky had learned of his past and wept for it endlessly. He hadn't slept. The hotel room Jimin had booked for him was too pristine, too silent. It made the sounds in his head, the splintered cries of forgotten memories, the whispered name Seojun, echo louder. The bracelet was in his hand again. SJ. He turned it over and over, feeling the grooves of letters etched into the metal. A mother's gift, a truth denied, his name, or the name he was forced to forget. When the knock came, it wasn't gentle. He opened the door to find Taehyung. His eyes were stormy, jaw tight. We need to talk. Jungkook stepped aside without a word. Taehyung entered like a man on trial. Deliberate, cautious, watching Jungkook as if gauging whether to tell the truth or keep lying. I saw the live stream, he said finally. Everyone did. Then you know, Jungkook replied flatly. I know Jimin exploded, Taehyung said. I know he dropped something nuclear and left the world to sift through the fallout. But I also know Jimin. And I know he doesn't do that without reason. Jungkook turned away. He says I'm not who I think I am. That my father erased someone named Seojun. That I might be him. Taehyung's breath caught. That's not possible. You sure? Jungkook spun, voice raw. Because I don't remember anything before I was 4. My earliest memory is already a lie. And there are no photos of me younger than that. None. Just nothing. Taehyung hesitated. Then, reluctantly, he pulled out his phone and opened his gallery. He scrolled. Stopped. Showed Jungkook a photo. It was of an old group shot. Taehyung as a kid, Jimin beside him, and between them another boy. Not quite Jungkook, not quite different. The eyes were familiar. So was the smile. I never told anyone this, Taehyung said. But we used to play at your family's house. You, me, Jimin, and someone else. I always thought he was a cousin or something. Until one day he wasn't there anymore. Jungkook stared at the photo. I asked once. Your father said he moved abroad. But your mother, Taehyung faltered. She looked like she wanted to scream. You knew, Jungkook whispered. You all knew something. No, Jungkook, I suspected. But when no one else said anything, when it all went quiet, I convinced myself I imagined it. Jungkook turned away, gripping the edge of the dresser. So I'm not even real. Stop that. Taehyung's voice cracked. You are real. You exist. You're here. That's all that matters. It's not all that matters. Jungkook shouted. I want to know who I was. Who I am. Was I loved? Was I abandoned? Did I have a family that was torn apart while I lived in luxury on someone else's name? There was a beat of silence. Then Taehyung said, "There's one place your father always kept locked. The study." Jungkook stilled. "No one was allowed in," Taehyung continued. "Not even staff. Not your mother. He kept the key around his neck. And when he died, they buried him with it." Jungkook's mouth set in a grim line. "Then we're going to dig it up." The cemetery was perched on a wind-battered hill, surrounded by cypress trees and fog that curled around the tombstones like fingers. It was after midnight. Jungkook held the shovel. Jimin stood by, flashlight in hand. Taehyung was there, too, hands in his coat pockets, lips pressed together in something between guilt and resolve. "Are we really doing this?" Taehyung asked. His voice was low, reverent. "I have to know," Jungkook said. He kept the truth in the dark. "We're just bringing it into the light." The ground was wet, dense. They dug in silence, the sound of metal slicing through earth the only rhythm. When they hit the coffin, it felt like striking thunder. Jimin reached down, fingers trembling, and twisted the latches. The smell was immediate, preserved wood and chemical decay. Inside, beside the still silent corpse, tucked into the folds of a designer suit, was a necklace. A key. Jungkook took it. They reburied the body in silence. Back at the estate, long abandoned, dusty and still, Jungkook found the study door as he remembered. Pristine oak untouched. The key slid in with a metallic sigh. The lock clicked. The room was untouched by time. Books lined the walls. The desk was immaculate. The fireplace held ash from a fire long cold. It was the safe in the wall that held the answers. Inside, documents, photos, a DNA test, a diary. Jungkook's hands shook as he read the entries, each one a dagger. "He knows about Seojun and Jimin. I saw them. It has to end. I told her to leave. She refused. I made her. He cries for her in his sleep. I told the doctor to prescribe something stronger." Jungkook dropped the diary. His chest heaved. "He took me," he whispered. "He took me and erased her." Jimin sat on the floor, head in hands. "I told you. He didn't just lie. He rewrote your entire life." Jungkook found the DNA test. His biological mother. Name redacted, location unknown. But a clue, her name once appeared on a deed to a cabin in Jeolla province. He stood. "I'm going there." Taehyung grabbed his arm. "You don't have to do this alone." Jungkook looked between them. Jimin, eyes hollow with pain. Taehyung, still reeling but loyal. Both had lived in the shadow of the same lie. "I think I do," Jungkook said. "But I'll come back." He left the house before dawn. The sky a bruised violet, the storm finally breaking. He didn't know what he would find in Jeolla. A grave, a woman, a truth too heavy to carry. But he knew this. The walls of his childhood were built from silence and ash. And he was done breathing dust. The wind howled like a wounded animal as Jungkook stepped out of the train station in rural Jeolla province. The landscape was a tapestry of barren trees, fog-draped hills, and the silvery glint of a lake that seemed to bleed into the sky. There were no cameras here, no managers, no fans, just raw winter air and the promise of a truth that might kill what remained of his old self. He had no clear address, just coordinates scribbled in faded ink on the back of an old deed, which he'd found buried in his father's safe. Jimin hadn't said a word when he left, but his eyes had followed Jungkook with a weight that felt like goodbye. The cabin was 3 kilometers from the edge of the nearest village. He walked. Mud clung to his shoes, branches scratched his face, and every step through the brambles felt like tearing away another layer of who he thought he was. He saw it through the mist like a dream half-remembered. A wooden house, small and dark, its roof caved in at one corner. A long-forgotten wind chime clanged erratically from the porch, screaming into the silence. Jungkook stood there for a moment, his breath visible, heart thunderous. Then he knocked. Nothing. He tried again, harder. The sound echoed through the trees. Then movement. Behind a curtain. The flash of an eye. He didn't wait. He spoke, loud enough for whoever was inside to hear every syllable. My name is Jungkook, but I think I was born with a different name. I think you were my mother. The door creaked open 3 inches. She looked nothing like he remembered because he remembered nothing, but her face hit him with a jolt of something primitive. Her eyes, they were his eyes, or rather he had hers. She stepped out slowly, like a ghost stepping into its own grave. Her hair was streaked with gray, her frame thin but proud. I thought you died, she said quietly, voice rasped with age and disbelief. I did, Jungkook replied, but I came back. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of old pine and burnt incense. Everything looked untouched for years. Blankets folded too neatly, a bowl of fruit molded on the counter, letters stacked on the windowsill but never mailed. She made tea. Neither of them drank it. What's your name? He asked finally. Minseo, she said, her hands trembling only slightly. Minseo Yoon. He nodded. And I'm your son? Her face crumpled with 1,000 buried memories. She didn't answer. She simply rose, walked to the fireplace, and pulled a small wooden box from behind a loose brick. She opened it and handed him a tiny blue slipper, frayed and stained. I made that for Seojun when he was a baby, she said. You used to sleep holding it in your hand. He stared at the slipper as if it were a detonator. What happened to me? He whispered. Why did he take me? Minseo sat down slowly. Because I said no. The fire crackled. He wanted to control everything. Your father. My husband. She spat the word like poison. When I found out what he was doing, how he was grooming Jimin and Seojun to be his legacy, how he saw them as property, not boys, I threatened to go public. Jungkook's pulse pounded in his ears. He told me I was unstable, that I'd had a breakdown. He forged medical records. I woke up in a clinic with restraints on my wrists, and when I got out you were gone. They told me you died in a fire. She took his hand then, fiercely. I mourned you, Seojun. I buried my soul. Jungkook's chest felt like it was collapsing. You're sure? He asked. You're absolutely sure I'm him? She gave him a sad smile and lifted her shirt. Her ribs were visible. On her side, a small, identical birthmark to his, crescent-shaped, just above the hip. You had it too, just like me. He collapsed into her arms, trembling. For the first time in years, maybe ever, he cried not as an idol, not as Jungkook, not as the man the world saw, but as a boy who had been stolen, rewritten, hidden in plain sight. When he could speak again, he asked, Why didn't you come back for me? She swallowed hard. I did, but no one would let me near you. You were surrounded by walls I couldn't break. And when I tried, they made me disappear. The words hung like knives. So what now? He asked finally. Minseo looked at him. Now you decide who you want to be, not who they made you. That night, Jungkook didn't sleep. He sat by the lake, watching the moon drift like a coin tossed across black water. Inside him, something was changing, not breaking but unburying. In the morning, his phone had 73 missed calls. Jimin, Taehyung, HYB's legal team, Dispatch, CNN. He turned the phone off. Minseo sat beside him, a scarf wrapped around her shoulders. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Finally, he said, I want the world to know. Her eyes snapped to his. I want to tell them everything, he said. About Seojun. About what he did. About the stolen life. That's dangerous. I know. And painful. I know. She nodded. Then I'll stand with you. Jungkook rose. The cabin creaked beneath his steps. He opened the front door. But there, standing at the edge of the forest, was a man in a black coat. Jimin. You shouldn't be here, Jungkook said. Jimin stepped forward. Neither should you. But we're here anyway. Together. Jungkook stared at him. You lied to me. You waited years. And you would have ignored the truth if I told you sooner, Jimin said. I waited for you to be strong enough to burn it all down. Jungkook took a deep breath. Then help me. Do what? Tell them. The world. Everything. Jimin looked at Minseo. Even about Seojun? Jungkook nodded. Especially about him. A gust of wind swept through the trees, sharp and stinging. Minseo stepped back into the cabin. Jimin and Jungkook faced each other like co-conspirators on the edge of a war. Then we go public, Jimin said. And just like that, the final phase began, not of unburying the past, but rewriting the future. The studio lights buzzed like flies against glass. Jungkook sat beneath them, sweat collecting at the base of his spine. Across from him, the most feared journalist in South Korea, Taehyung, sat in a perfect, poised silence. Her team scurried around the set like ants before a thunderstorm. Every camera was live. Every microphone was open. The network executives had fought him on this. HYBE threatened litigation. The media agency tried to pull his contracts. His lawyer warned him the legal fallout could ruin him. But he didn't care. He wasn't Jungkook anymore. Or rather, he wasn't only Jungkook. He was Seojun too. And the truth had claws. It wouldn't stay buried another day. This is a live interview, Yoongi said, her voice low and surgical. Once you say something, it can't be unsaid. Good, Jungkook said. She tilted her head. You're prepared for the backlash? I've already lived through worse. The producer counted them in from behind the glass. 5 seconds. 4, 3. The red light blinked on. Yoongi's smile was rehearsed, elegant. Tonight, in a moment that has stunned the world, global icon Jeon Jungkook has asked to speak. Not about his music, not about fame, but about a secret so personal, so explosive, it threatens to dismantle a dynasty. Mr. Jeon, the floor is yours. Jungkook looked directly into the camera. His heart was galloping. His palms were cold. My name is Jeon Jungkook. But that name was given to me by the man who erased my past. A ripple of gasps behind the camera. My birth name, he said, was Seojun. I was taken from my mother when I was 4. My father, Jeon Byung-il, orchestrated an elaborate cover-up to hide the truth, fabricate an identity, and bury the people who could expose him. Yoongi remained still, but her eyes gleamed like blades. These are serious accusations. Are you saying your father kidnapped you? Yes, Jungkook said, and destroyed the lives of 2 people in the process. My real mother, Min Seo-yoon, and my brother's first love, Jimin. The camera panned slightly to show Jimin, sitting silently in the front row of the live audience. His face was taut with fury, pain, and pride. Yoongi leaned forward. Do you have proof? Jungkook reached under his chair and placed the worn box on the table. The slipper, the letters, the DNA results, a copy of his father's journal. This is all I have, he said. But the lies are all public record. The timeline of my existence, photos only after 1999, a fire that conveniently destroyed early records, a mother who never once called me by a childhood nickname. Yoongi lifted the DNA results. Her hands were gloved in white cotton, as if touching something sacred. She read it live. Min Seo-yoon, 99.99% probability of biological maternity. Another gasp. Audible now. The chat stream was exploding in real time. Hashtag Seojun is real began trending before the segment even hit the halfway mark. Yoongi's voice dropped. And what do you want now? I want justice, Jungkook said. For my mother. For Jimin. For myself. He turned to the camera. And I want the truth to be louder than the legacy of a man who built his empire on silence and lies. That line would be replayed 1,000,000 times by morning. Then Yoongi asked the question he dreaded. Are you saying the woman you grew up calling mother was complicit? Jungkook swallowed. I think she was scared, he said. But yes, she knew. And the company, HYBE? Jungkook paused. Then, they didn't know. But they benefited. And now they're afraid the truth will break their golden boy. Is it worth it? Yoongi asked. Losing everything? I'm not losing anything, Jungkook said. I'm getting my life back. The camera blinked off. The light died. Silence slammed into the studio like a falling curtain. Then, chaos. Producers shouting. Lawyers dialing phones. staff weeping, Jimin reaching for him, pulling him into a tight embrace. "You did it," Jimin whispered. "You actually did it." But it wasn't over. Not even close. That night, Dispatch dropped a damning exposé. An anonymous whistleblower, later revealed to be a former HYBE archivist, leaked internal memos showing that the label had quietly investigated Jungkook's past years ago and buried the results to protect his brand. It wasn't just a scandal. It was a war. The next morning, protesters stood outside HYBE headquarters. Some held signs that read, "We stand with Seojin." Others, older, loyalists to Byung-il's legacy, screamed that Jungkook was a liar, a traitor, a mentally unstable fame seeker. His brand deals vanished overnight. Fashion houses pulled out. Interview requests doubled, tripled. Talk shows begged. But Jungkook didn't answer any of them. He was in Jeolla, at the cabin, sitting beside his mother, who was now living under 24-hour surveillance after death threats were posted to her door. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to drag you into this." Minseo smiled, tired and radiant. "You didn't drag me. You came back for me." That night, someone tried to break into the cabin. It was Jimin who tackled the man first. The intruder was masked, armed, screaming about betrayal and legacy. Taehyung arrived in a black car minutes later, with 2 private security guards and an emergency extraction plan. "You're not safe here," he said. "You need to disappear for a while." Jungkook looked at his mother, then Jimin. "I can't. If I disappear, they win." "They already lost," Taehyung said. "The truth is out." "But justice isn't," Jungkook replied. "And I'm not leaving until the world knows what he did to Seojun." Minseo grabbed his hand. "Then stay," she said, "and fight." And he did. Over the next weeks, lawsuits erupted. Civil actions. Investigations. Journalists camped outside every known residence connected to the Jeon family. Former staff began coming forward, each one adding another stone to the mountain of truth. But the biggest surprise came from an unexpected place. The woman he once called mother. She released a statement, a written confession. "I loved the boy, not the lies," she wrote. "But I was complicit. I was weak, and I have lived in shame for decades. Seojun, if you read this, I'm sorry. I was never your mother. But I did love you." It broke the nation. Jungkook read it on the steps of the Seoul courthouse, the media swarming him like bees to sugar. He didn't cry. He just nodded. "She wasn't my mother," he said. "But she was part of the story. And now, finally, that story belongs to me." And for the first time, the crowd applauded. Not the idol, but the truth. The courtroom was ice cold. Not from temperature, the air conditioning was muted, nearly off, but from what saturated the space between each breath, betrayal, legacy, and the slow, brutal exposure of one of the most celebrated family names in the country. Jungkook sat at the plaintiff's table, his hands folded together, knuckles pale. He wore a dark suit, unbranded, stark. He didn't want fashion to speak today. The truth would have to do that. Across the aisle sat the HYBE legal team, 12 lawyers, 3 public relations officers, and a man Jungkook hadn't seen in over a decade. Byung-ho Jeon, his uncle. A quieter man than his brother. Smarter too. Less visible. But far more dangerous. He hadn't tried to stop the interview. Hadn't issued a public statement. Hadn't been seen until now. Jimin sat behind Jungkook, his hands clenched on his knees, his expression carved from stone. Taehyung was next to him, flanked by security. Minseo had refused to come. The threats had grown too aggressive, too targeted. She was under government protection now, somewhere outside Busan. Jungkook looked at the judge. She was young, sharp, rumored to be incorruptible. That was all they had now. Rumors. And courage. The trial began. Opening statements blurred into testimony. They read through affidavits. The forged documents. The audio recording never aired of Jungkook's father threatening Minseo. The hidden transactions. The payouts. And then it came, Jimin on the stand. The courtroom stiffened as he took his place. His black suit made his hair shine like jet. "Please state your name," the judge said. "Park Jimin. And your relationship to the plaintiff?" Jimin hesitated. "I was his brother's partner. I was also his legal guardian for a brief time after his father's death." Clarify, the defense snapped. You were never legally appointed. Jimin nodded. True. But when a child cries for you, wakes from nightmares calling your name, comes to your house when his world breaks, does the law need to validate that kind of guardianship? The judge allowed the answer. Tell us about Seojun, the plaintiff's attorney said. Jimin inhaled slowly. Seojun was the kind of boy who'd rather walk home soaked than let someone else get wet. He was soft in ways that scared his father. And he loved with a purity that made people uncomfortable. Especially when he loved me. Murmurs rose behind them. The judge banged her gavel. Order. And your relationship was romantic? The attorney asked. Yes, Jimin said, firm. And we were happy. Until one night, he disappeared. Jungkook watched as Jimin recounted that night. The silence. The threats. The note in Seojun's handwriting that later turned out to be forged. Jimin didn't cry. But when he looked directly at Jungkook and said, they didn't just steal your name, Seojun, they stole you, Jungkook had to grip the table to keep from falling apart. Then came Byungho's turn on the stand. Did you know your brother falsified medical records? The plaintiff's attorney asked. I suspected, Byungho answered calmly. You suspected. And did nothing. I did what families do. I protected our own. Even when it involved kidnapping? Even then. The word hung like a blade in the air. Why? Byungho's eyes found Jungkook. Because he believed he was saving the family name. And I believed him. Until it was too late. And now? Now I see the damage. And I still wonder if it was worth it. Jungkook stood suddenly. Everyone turned. I'll tell you, he said, voice steady. It wasn't. The judge didn't reprimand him. Didn't stop him. So he kept going. You want to know what it's like growing up thinking someone's your mother? To feel something's wrong but be told you're just sensitive? You gaslight a child long enough, he forgets how to trust even his own mind. He stepped away from the table. You want to know what my earliest memory is? I was 4. I was holding the slipper, he held up the baby blue artifact, and crying because my mother was gone. And someone told me she died. That I'd imagined her lullabies. That I was confused. His voice broke. I was not confused. I was stolen. The courtroom fell into reverent silence. Outside, the storm had returned. When the trial broke for lunch, the world outside was in upheaval. Protesters had been replaced with candle-holding supporters. Old women wept. Young teens chanted his name, not the one they'd always known. Seojun. He was no longer an idol. He was something else now. And with that came consequences. His bank accounts froze. Sponsors walked. A private video of him from years ago surfaced, intimate, not shameful, but enough to draw blood from the wolves. Jimin found him in the courthouse garden that evening. They're coming harder now, he said. I expected that. But not this, Jimin said, handing him a photo. This was mailed to my apartment. It was a picture of Jungkook at age 3. A real one. Not staged. Not retouched. He was smiling in his mother's lap, wrapped in a faded red sweater. And beside them, Seojun. Another boy. A twin. The photo tore the world again. 2 of you. Jungkook whispered. Jimin nodded. You had a brother. A twin. One they did erase. Entirely. Then, who am I? Jimin's voice was gentle, pained. You're both. You're all that's left. The final days of the trial blurred into emotional testimony, closed-door revelations, and a final ruling that stunned even the most seasoned legal analysts. Jungkook was granted legal restoration of his original birth identity, Seojun Yoon. HYB was ordered to pay restitution. The estate of Jeon Byung-il was frozen pending criminal inquiry. But none of it mattered more than what came next. Minseo stood on the courthouse steps, escorted by guards, her voice amplified by tears and microphones. For years I was silent. For years I was told I had no child, that I was sick. But look at him now. This is my son. This is Seojun. And I will never be silent again. That night, under flickering street lamps and a city gasping from truth, Jungkook, or Seojun, walked alone. A call came through. Not a journalist. Not a lawyer. It was a woman's voice. Soft. Familiar. Breaking. I knew your father. I knew what he did, she said. And I have something. Something he left behind. It's about your brother. He stopped walking. Who are you? He asked. But she'd already hung up. The truth, it seemed, had more layers still. And Seojun had only just begun. Rain had begun to fall again, quiet, steady, like the sky was weeping not for sorrow but for the cleansing that had begun. Seoul was quieter these days. Or maybe Seojun had simply stopped hearing the noise. His name Jungkook was no longer his shield. It was a stage name, an echo from a life he now saw as someone else's carefully directed screenplay. The man in the mirror had changed. The press still used both names, unsure which would win in the court of public opinion. Seojun didn't care. His phone had been buzzing all day. His manager, his lawyer, his publicist, Taehyung, even Namjoon, who hadn't spoken to him since the scandal broke, left him a 10-minute voice memo that began with, "I don't know how to say this," and ended with, "I still believe in you." But it was the blocked call that changed everything. The woman's voice had been sharp, trembling. She'd said she knew his father. Said she had something about your brother. Not Jimin. Not himself. A third presence. A shadow. Seojun couldn't sleep. The photo Jimin had shown him haunted him now, the one with the twin. That boy had his face. His eyes. But there was something else too. A sadness even children shouldn't carry. He paced his apartment until sunrise, then packed a bag. The woman had sent coordinates via a private number. A small town on the edge of Gangwon province, near a retirement clinic known for silencing the inconvenient. He didn't tell Jimin. Didn't tell anyone. He boarded the train alone. The clinic sat behind wrought iron gates. Ivy climbed the stone walls like withered veins. The receptionist, a young woman with distant eyes, checked him in without asking questions. It was clear someone had been told to expect him. "Room 302, she said. "Second floor." "She doesn't like loud voices." He walked the corridor slowly, every step echoing like a warning. Room 302 had no name on the door. He knocked. Silence. Then a rustle. When the door opened, a woman in her late 70s stood there, thin, almost bird-like, but sharp in the eyes. "You look just like him," she said. Seojun didn't speak. She stepped aside. Inside, the room was modest. A single bed. A bookshelf overflowing with journals and tapes. A tray with untouched food. A photo on the wall, his father, much younger, with this woman. "You were close to him?" Seojun asked. "I was his first wife," she said. The words hit like a wrecking ball. "No one ever mentioned it. Because I was erased. Just like you. Just like him." She walked to a drawer and pulled out a yellowed folder. "This," she said, "is your brother." Seojun opened it with shaking hands. Medical records. Birth certificates. Photos. A name, Yunseo. "Yunseo," he repeated, voice hollow. "My son. Your twin." He sat down slowly, knees weak. "He was sick," the woman said. "From birth. Fragile lungs. Your father hated weakness. He hid Yunseo away, told the world we only had one child. But he kept records. He had to so the doctors could work. I wasn't allowed to see him after he turned 5. Seojun swallowed. "Is he alive?" She hesitated, then walked to her closet and removed a small box. Inside, a lock of hair. A photograph of a pale boy in a hospital bed, tubes in his arms, a book in his lap. "He died," she said. 10 years ago. In a government facility in Namyangju. Seojun stared at the image. "I was told he'd been sent abroad for special care," she said. "That he was getting better. That it was best if I moved on. But he never left the country." "Why didn't you say anything before?" he asked. She smiled bitterly. "Because I signed something I thought would protect him. It was a lie. Like everything your father touched." He spent the day reading everything. Letters Yunseo had written, never sent. Drawings. Dreams. A tape labeled Seojun, for you. He played it on an old recorder. The voice was weak, soft. A boy's voice. "Hi, Seojun. I don't know if you're real or just a dream I keep having. But the nurses said once that I have a twin. They said you're healthy. That you're happy. That you live in a big house. Sometimes I pretend I'm you. I pretend I run. That I can breathe without pain. That I can sing." The tape hissed for a moment. "If we ever meet, I hope you're kind. I hope you don't forget me. I hope you know that even if we were separated, I loved you anyway." Seojun wept. He didn't try to stop it. He let the grief crash through him like waves over broken stone. That night, he didn't return to Seoul. He sat in the garden of the clinic, eyes skyward, heart raw. In the morning, he made a decision. The press had been begging for another interview. This time, it wouldn't be about the lies. It would be about Yunseo. He returned to Seoul 3 days later. Jimin was waiting, furious. "Where the hell did you go?" he demanded. "I had to find him." "Who?" Seojun handed him the tape. Jimin listened. His eyes filled. "Oh my God. He's gone," Seojun said. 10 years. Alone. Forgotten. Just like me. "Not like you," Jimin said. "You came back. I have to tell the world. Are you ready for another firestorm?" "I don't care. They erased a child. I won't let that stay buried." The press conference was announced within 24 hours. It was held in a concert hall, packed to the rafters. No music. No lights. Just Seojun on stage, a single chair, and the truth. He told Yeonseo's story. He played the tape. He read the letters. And when he finished, he said only this. There are millions of children in the world who vanish into institutions, into lies, into silence. My brother was one of them. This is my vow, I will never stop speaking his name. And for the first time, the world didn't just listen. It stood. Every reporter, every camera crew, every rival, every fan. They stood. Not for a singer, but for a boy who never got to sing. You still don't get it, do you? Jimin's voice shook with fury, barely contained behind the private lounge's soundproof walls. You stand on stage, quoting that man like he was some kind of wise prophet, and you still expect me to believe you're ready to be Seojun? Jungkook sat in silence, back pressed against the cold leather of the booth, the echo of applause from his just-finished press conference still ringing in his ears. The world had finally heard Yeonseo's story. The world had finally seen the truth. And yet this. You think I wanted to quote him? Jungkook snapped, rising to meet Jimin's eye. You think I even remember what parts of him are in me anymore? That's the problem, Jimin said. You do. The room grew thick with heat. Neither of them blinked. Earlier that night, the press had gathered beneath a full moon and 100 cameras, recording every beat of Seojun's words, his brother's name, his promise, his pain. The crowd had cheered. The media had wept. But one slip, one moment of unconscious instinct, when Jungkook, emotionally exhausted, closed his speech with a phrase he hadn't realized was his father's, had detonated everything. Marriage is about loyalty, not comfort, he'd said. His father's words. A quote repeated at family dinners, in lectures, in silence carved into his brain. He didn't realize what he'd done until he saw Jimin's face. Saw the storm behind those eyes. Heard the silence fall. The world had still cheered. But Jimin hadn't. And now here they were. He said that to Minseo, Jimin said coldly. He said it the night he took you from her. He used those exact words to justify why a woman who loved her child didn't deserve to keep him. Jungkook felt the air squeeze from his lungs. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. Jungkook turned away, running his hands through his hair. I didn't mean to say it. I didn't even realize. Do you think I wanted his voice coming out of my mouth like that? I think there's still a part of you that wants to believe he loved you. The words hit harder than any slap. I'm not asking you to forgive him, Jungkook said, his voice trembling. I don't know how to separate what he taught me from who I am. You don't have to, Jimin said. You just have to burn the parts of him you still carry. And what about the parts of him that made me strong? Jungkook challenged. The discipline? The drive? The precision? All that wasn't nothing, Jimin. No, Jimin said, stepping forward, but none of that was love. And none of it came from him. That came from you. That came from Seojun. From Yeonseo. From us. Jungkook looked up sharply. Jimin's voice broke. You're trying so hard to mourn the man who broke you that you're forgetting who put you back together. Jungkook closed his eyes. He saw them all. Jimin holding him the night the interview aired. Taehyung bringing him food he didn't eat. Minseo touching his face like he might vanish. And Yeonseo, his voice on tape, soft and small, calling him from the past. You're right, he whispered. God, you're right? Jimin didn't move. I hate him, Jungkook said. I hate that I still talk like him. Think like him. I hate that I can't tell where he ends and I begin. You begin here, Jimin said, placing a hand on his chest. Right now. Not when you were stolen. Not when you were groomed into silence. Here. With me. Jungkook dropped into the seat again, overwhelmed. After a long pause, he said, what now? Jimin's expression softened. Now we finish what he started. What do you mean? We built something new. Not out of revenge. Not for attention. But for Yeonseo. For every forgotten kid in those clinics. For the real Seojun. For you. Jungkook met his gaze. With you? Jimin nodded. Always. There was a knock at the door. Taehyung stepped in, holding up his phone, eyes wide. You need to see this. He turned the screen toward them. A live stream was trending. It was the ex-CEO of HYBE. Breaking his silence. Jeon Byung-il built an empire on fear. I should know. I helped him do it. But there's something no one knows. About Yeonseo. About how he really died. The three of them froze. The screen went black. Did it just cut out? Jimin asked. No, Taehyung said, paling. It was cut. Jungkook stood slowly. They're still hiding something. Jimin's hand gripped his. Then we dig again. Seojun looked into the mirror. He didn't see Jungkook anymore. He didn't see his father. He saw a fire. Still burning. Faro. You said. Lanjakan episode Selanjutnya Dengan episode Yang Lebi Panjang 10,000 kata atau Lebi Nayak Perkapan Panas Seru Tegang controversial. Kajudan dan emotional dan barakan saya narasi saja dalam bahasa Inggris tanpa menggunakan poin-poin. ChatGPT said. Episode 9, Ashes Don't Lie. It began with silence. The kind that isn't quiet, but charged like the pause between thunder and the shattering of a window. The live stream had died mid-sentence. The former HYBE CEO's voice had been clipped as if someone had reached through the internet and ripped the truth straight out of the world's throat. Jungkook no Seojun stood there for a full minute, eyes locked on the frozen screen, breath caught in a liminal place between grief and fury. Jimin was already on the phone with a contact at SBS. Taehyung had his laptop open, trying to trace the digital signature of the cut stream. What did he mean how Yeonseo really died? Jimin's voice wasn't steady. He said that like it wasn't what we thought. Like it wasn't natural, Seojun said quietly. Taehyung's fingers danced over keys. The stream's origin server was hijacked. That wasn't just a glitch. It was a kill command. Someone terminated the feed from the source. Seojun closed his eyes. Yeonseo. Pale hands. A fragile smile. A voice recorded for no one but a brother he never met. If they silenced the CEO, Jimin said, they'll come for us next. They already did, Taehyung muttered. They just failed. They left that room and didn't go home. For 2 days they vanished off-grid. No calls. No cameras. No staff. Just them, Jimin's old hatchback, and the drive to Namyangju. That's where the woman at the clinic had said it happened. That's where Yeonseo died. Or, as they now feared, was killed. The facility had been shut down for years. A government probe into inhumane patient treatment had shuttered the building before the pandemic, but records were sealed. No one had dared crack it open since. Until Seojun. The building was a ghost, peeling paint, windows like gouged out eyes, vines clawing up the brickwork like time itself wanted to swallow it whole. Jimin parked a block away. They walked the rest. A chain hung across the gate. Broken. Someone had been here before. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and rot. This was a hospital? Taehyung muttered. It feels like a prison. They moved through it like men walking through a nightmare, operating rooms left in chaos, child-sized wheelchairs overturned, cabinets still filled with syringes and sealed vials. And then they found it. Room 113. Faded, rusted plaque. Half-torn label on the door, YS Jeon. Jimin froze. This is it. Seojun reached for the doorknob. Locked. He didn't hesitate. He kicked it open. The room was small. Clean, somehow less dusty than the rest. The bed was still made. A child's drawing was taped to the wall. 2 figures under a tree holding hands. One had a breathing tube. The other had wings. Oh God, Jimin whispered. Seojun stepped inside, touched the desk. A journal. He opened it. The handwriting was unmistakable. Small, precise. It matched the letters. But this wasn't for him. This was Yeonseo's diary. Unsent. Hidden. Page after page of lonely thoughts. Of asking why no one came. Of dreams where Seojun rescued him. Of fear. Real fear. One entry stopped Seojun cold. He said I'd go to sleep and wake up better. But I don't feel better. I feel dizzy. I feel like I'm falling. If I don't wake up, tell Seojun I love him. Below that, a date. 2 days before Yeonseo was declared dead. Jimin was shaking. That's euthanasia. That's what it sounds like. They murdered him, Seojun whispered. And called it mercy. They took everything. The journal. The drawing. Even the 4-pole, still intact. Then Taehyung found the camera. Hidden in the ceiling corner. Still wired. Old tech, he said. But if the hard drive still exists, we can find it. They tore through 3 rooms before locating a server closet. Behind a cabinet, a dusty black tower with blinking amber lights. Still functional. They carried it out together. Like pallbearers. Back at Jimin's apartment, they cracked it open. Seojun watched, every second stretching like a scream waiting to break. Taehyung decrypted the system. Pulled files. Dated videos. Then one showed Yeonseo. In bed. Pale. Hooked up to wires. And beside him. Their father. Not as he looked in public. Not regal. Not composed. But cold. Distant. Methodical. He whispered something to a nurse. She nodded. Inserted a needle into the 4-line. Yeonseo's face contorted. No, Jimin whispered. No. Seojun couldn't breathe. Yeonseo's body began to tremble. His eyes fluttered. He gasped, tried to sit up, and then... stillness. The video ended. Seojun fell to his knees. They didn't speak for an hour. There were no words left. Only a pain too wide for language. When the grief dulled enough for thought, Seojun stood. We release it. They'll sue us, Taehyung said. Let them, Seojun said. Let them try. The video dropped at midnight. Unedited. Uncaptioned. Just the raw footage. Yunseo dying. Not by illness, but by decision. The world reacted like a wound had been torn open. News anchors cried live on air. Activists filled the streets. Government officials scrambled to issue statements. Hashtags spread like wildfire. Hashtag justice for Yunseo. Hashtag he was killed. Hashtag Jeon speaks. And then came the call. The former HYBE CEO. He was ready to talk, really talk. No cameras. No network. Just him, Jun, and the truth. They met in a secluded cafe outside Seoul. The man looked hollowed out. A shadow of the corporate titan he once was. I didn't know, he said. Not until it was too late. Your father paid everyone. Doctors. Officials. Judges. Jun stared. Why did you lie on the live stream? I wasn't supposed to say anything. They threatened my family. But now, I have nothing left to lose. What else? Jimin asked. The man slid a flash drive across the table. His will. Jun frowned. My father's. It wasn't made public. But it names you. And Yunseo. He left without finishing his coffee. Back at the apartment, Jun opened the files. The will was dated a year before Byung-il's death. It was cold. Precise. Legalistic. And buried within it, a clause. In the event of my death, I request that my second son, Yunseo Jeon, be quietly interred with no media attention. Should Yunseo not survive past adolescence, all remaining holdings and property shall be passed to Jungkook, Jun, with the understanding that he will never seek to exhume the past. Never seek to exhume the past, Jimin repeated. He knew you'd find out. Jun closed the laptop. I don't want his money. You already have something better, Jimin said. What? The fire he could never extinguish. They didn't sleep that night. Because in the morning, Jun was going to Seoul Central Court. Not to sue. To press charges. For conspiracy. For medical murder. For silencing a child and rewriting a life. For Yunseo. For himself. And for every truth that ever died in silence. The morning sky over Seoul bled gray. The city below, frantic with flashing lights, was already coming undone before dawn. The courthouse steps, usually a solemn cascade of quiet tension, had become a battleground of banners, voices, camera flashes, and the echo of a boy's last breath. Yunseo's face was everywhere now. On signs. On walls. Printed across t-shirts, candles, and trembling palms. The boy who never sang, never ran, never tasted breath without pain, had become the symbol of every child failed by silence. He had become South Korea's reckoning. And today Jun would speak for him. Not as an idol. Not as a name wrapped in stage lights and gold. But as a brother. As a survivor. As the son of a man who built an empire on shadows. The crowd parted like a tide as Jun approached the courthouse. Jimin and Taehyung were beside him, one flanking each side like silent sentinels. Neither said a word. Their eyes were fire, their bodies steel. They had stood through every storm. This was no different. A reporter lunged from the press line. Do you believe the government will indict your father posthumously? Jun stopped. My father may be dead, he said quietly, but the system that let him exist is not. And I'm not here to bury him. I'm here to end it. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Walls lined with cameras, sketch artists scribbling furiously, journalists tweeting before their ink dried. There were no whispers. No side conversations. Only the quiet anticipation of collapse. The judge entered. Not the young woman from before. This one was older. Stoic. Rumored to be unbribable. Jun took the stand. The prosecution began with the tape. The one of Yunseo dying. They didn't censor it. They didn't redact. The judge's knuckles went white against her gavel as she gripped it. A murmur started when the defense stood. The lead attorney was an old family friend of the Jeons. His reputation was legendary. His allegiance absolute. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, what we have here is not a trial of truth but of grief. And while I extend my deepest sympathies to Mr. Jun for the loss of his twin, I urge the court to consider the complexities of intent. Of mercy. Of medical necessity. Jun rose from his seat, unprompted. I wasn't asking for sympathy, he said. I came here for accountability. The judge didn't stop him. I'm not interested in framing this as a tragedy. We've had enough of those. What I'm demanding is that this court recognize what was done to my brother not as a misfortune, but a crime. He turned to the gallery where his mother sat, hands folded, eyes glassy. They said he was a burden. They said he was sick. That he was better off gone. But Yunseo didn't ask to die. He asked to live. He wrote it. He recorded it. And then they took it from him. The court was frozen. No scribbles. No keystrokes. Just breath held tight. Everything I am today, Seojun continued, I owe to a boy who never got the chance. And everything I lost, my childhood, my truth, my name, was stolen by a man the world once celebrated. He looked up at the judge. I'm not here to erase that man. I'm here to ensure the next one like him never rises again. The prosecutor laid out the charges: involuntary manslaughter, medical conspiracy, destruction of identity, illegal confinement of a minor. They played more tapes, nurses whispering about the fragile twin, financial records routing hush money through dummy corporations, emails between the late Byung-il and hospital directors referring to Yunseo as a liability. And then they brought in the nurse. The one who gave the injection. She was older now, gray-haired, trembling. I didn't want to, she said. I begged him. I said the boy could still live. He told me some lives are meant to be forgotten. Gasps rang through the courtroom. Jimin clenched his fists until his knuckles cracked. When court adjourned for the day, the world outside had shifted again. Supporters lit candles along the courthouse railings. Protesters marched with photos of other missing children, other names erased from documents and memory. Back at the apartment, Jimin was pacing. That lawyer is going to play the mercy card until it bleeds, he said. They'll try to make it seem like your father spared him suffering. He didn't, Seojun said. He spared himself. They sat in silence until Taehyung, who had been unusually quiet, stood and opened a folder. There's more, he said. From the drive. What? Seojun asked. Taehyung placed a single document on the table. It was another will. Not their father's. Yunseo's. Written in crayon, shaky but signed. If I die, I want Seojun to have everything I had. Even if it's just my drawings. He's my other half. Please remember me. Seojun ran his fingers across the page. He wrote this. It's dated 2 weeks before the injection. They presented it to the judge the next morning. The courtroom was full again, but the silence was different now. Less tense. More reverent. Like they were no longer watching a trial, but the final chapters of a resurrection. The judge read the will aloud. And the gallery cried. Then she ruled. In the matter of Yunseo Jeon, she said, voice steady, this court recognizes his death as a wrongful act. It classifies the event as involuntary manslaughter under coercive medical circumstances. The court orders the posthumous reinstatement of Yunseo's civil status and grants Seojun Yoon the legal right to act as his surviving heir. Seojun didn't smile. He didn't cry. He bowed. And when the cameras chased him outside, he stopped only once at the steps where he turned and said, my name was taken from me. My family, my voice, my truth. But today I'm not reclaiming Jungkook. I'm not erasing Seojun. I'm not running from either. I'm choosing both. He looked at the sky. For every child who was ever told they weren't enough, who was hidden, who was silenced, this isn't just justice for me. It's justice for all of us. He paused. My name is Jeon Seojun Jungkook. And this time, the world didn't just cheer. It listened. And remembered.